They say you never really know someone until you see them at their worst. I thought I knew Emily. After 12 years of marriage, I believed we'd weathered every storm together. Financial struggles during my early career, the loss of her mother, 2 miscarriages before our daughter was born, and the everyday challenges that come with building a life together. We weren't perfect, but we were solid. Or so I thought. My name is Robert Chambers, and I'm a civil engineer living in Charlotte, North Carolina. At 41, I had what most people would consider a successful life: a good job at a reputable firm, a beautiful home in a quiet suburb, and a family I loved more than anything. Emily was 38, working as a marketing director for a mid-sized pharmaceutical company. Our daughter, Lily, was 9 years old, smart, funny, and the absolute center of our universe. Looking back now, I can see the signs I missed. The way Emily started working late more frequently. How she became protective of her phone, taking it everywhere, even to the bathroom. The new clothes. The gym membership she actually used. The subtle distance that crept between us like frost on a window. But I trusted her. I trusted us. That was my mistake. This isn't a story about redemption or forgiveness. This isn't one of those tales where everyone learns a valuable lesson and moves forward as better people. This is about betrayal in its rawest form. The kind that doesn't just break your heart but shatters your entire understanding of reality. It's about the systematic destruction of everything I'd built, and how the person I loved most became someone I didn't recognize. What happened wasn't a simple affair. It was calculated, deliberate, and ultimately devastating in ways I never could have imagined. When the truth finally came out, it didn't arrive as a confession or a guilty conscience. It came as an explosion that left nothing standing. This is the story of how I lost everything, and what I did to make sure she lost even more. The first crack appeared on a Tuesday in late September. I was supposed to be in Raleigh for a project meeting, a 3-day trip to review structural plans for a new office complex. But the client's CEO had a family emergency, and they postponed everything at the last minute. I got the call at 6 in the morning, just as I was loading my overnight bag into the car. "Robert, I'm really sorry about this," Tom Brennan, the project manager, said over the phone. "His father had a stroke. We're pushing everything to next week." I wasn't upset. These things happened. I texted Emily to let her know I'd be home after all, then headed back inside to change out of my suit. The house was quiet. She'd already left for work, and Lily was at her friend Madison's house for a sleepover they'd planned for weeks. The day stretched ahead of me, unexpected and empty. I decided to use it productively. There were things around the house that needed attention: the leaking faucet in the guest bathroom, the loose railing on the back deck, the mountain of paperwork in my home office that I'd been avoiding. By noon, I'd fixed the faucet and was halfway through organizing my files when I realized I hadn't heard back from Emily. My text from that morning sat there, unread. That wasn't entirely unusual. She sometimes got caught up in meetings. But something made me check her location on the Find My app we'd set up years ago for safety and convenience. She wasn't at her office downtown. The blue dot pulsed from a location in South End, near the light rail. I zoomed in. It was an apartment complex called the Metropolitan, one of those modern buildings with floor-to-ceiling windows and a rooftop pool. I stared at my phone, confused. Maybe she was meeting a client. Her company sometimes did presentations at various locations. I tried calling. It went straight to voicemail. A strange feeling settled in my chest. Not quite suspicion, but something close to it. Unease. I told myself I was being ridiculous, that there was a perfectly logical explanation. But the feeling wouldn't leave. I made a sandwich I didn't eat. I tried to focus on the paperwork. 20 minutes passed, then 40. Her location hadn't changed. My mind started filling in the blanks with scenarios I didn't want to consider. At 1:15, I got in my car. The drive to Southend took 23 minutes. I kept expecting her location to move, to show her heading back to the office or to a restaurant or anywhere that made sense. It didn't. The blue dot stayed exactly where it was. I parked across the street from the Metropolitan and sat there feeling like an idiot. What was I doing? Was I really about to spy on my own wife based on nothing but a hunch and a location pin? But I couldn't make myself leave. Then I saw her car. Emily's white Lexus SUV was in the visitor parking area, tucked between a Tesla and a pickup truck. My heart started pounding in a way that made my vision blur at the edges. I waited. I don't know what I was waiting for exactly. Proof, maybe. Or for my paranoia to be proven wrong. The minutes crawled by. 2 o'clock came and went. I was supposed to be in Raleigh. She thought I was in Raleigh. At 2:30, the lobby doors opened, and Emily walked out. She wasn't alone. The man with her was tall, maybe 6'2", with dark hair graying at the temples and the kind of casual elegance that suggested money without effort. He wore expensive jeans and a white linen shirt with the sleeves rolled up. They weren't touching, but they moved together with the unconscious synchronization of people who knew each other's rhythms. I watched them walk toward the parking area, my hands gripping the steering wheel hard enough to hurt. Emily was laughing at something he'd said, her head tilted back in a way I recognized. Genuine amusement, not the polite laughter she gave to colleagues or acquaintances. She touched his arm briefly, and he smiled down at her with an intimacy that made my stomach turn. They stopped beside Emily's Tesla. The man leaned against the driver's door, blocking her from getting in. They talked for another 3 minutes. I watched the clock on my dashboard tick through each second. Whatever he was saying, Emily was listening intently, nodding occasionally. Then he reached out and tucked a strand of her hair behind her ear. That gesture, that simple, tender gesture I'd performed 1,000 times myself. Emily glanced around the parking lot, a quick, furtive scan that made my breath catch. I'd parked far enough away that her eyes passed over my car without recognition. Satisfied they were alone, she stepped closer to him. He kissed her forehead, then her lips. Nothing passionate or desperate, just comfortable, familiar, worse than passion somehow. They separated. He walked to a silver BMW X5 parked 3 spots down. Emily got into her car. I slumped lower in my seat as both vehicles pulled out of the lot, turning in opposite directions. Emily headed north, back toward her office, presumably. The BMW went south. I sat there for 10 minutes, maybe longer, trying to process what I'd just witnessed. My phone buzzed. A text from Emily. Meeting running long. Probably won't be home until 6. Can you pick up Lily? I stared at the message. The casual lie, delivered with the same ease she'd shown discussing Lily's homework or asking me to grab milk on the way home. How many times had she done this? How many late meetings and client dinners had been afternoons in that apartment? I should have driven away. Should have gone to pick up our daughter. Maintained the facade until I could think clearly. Instead, I found myself getting out of my car and walking toward the Metropolitan's entrance. The lobby was all glass and polished concrete, with abstract art on the walls and a security desk staffed by a young woman in a blazer. She looked up with a professional smile. Can I help you? I'm looking for information about one of your residents, I said. I think my wife might be renting here, but I'm not sure which unit. The smile became more guarded. I'm sorry, sir. We can't give out information about our residents. Of course not. I'd expected that answer, but had to try. I thanked her and left, but not before noting the directory board near the elevators. The building had 12 floors. Somewhere in there was an apartment where my wife had spent the last 90 minutes with another man. I drove to Lily's school on autopilot, arriving 15 minutes early. Other parents clustered near the entrance, chatting about soccer schedules and upcoming school events. I stood apart, checking my phone compulsively. Emily's location showed her back at her office now, maintaining the illusion. When Lily emerged with her backpack bouncing against her shoulders, her face lit up at seeing me instead of Emily. "Dad, you're here." "Mom's stuck at work," I said, the lie tasting like acid. "It's just us tonight. Can we get pizza?" "Sure, sweetheart. Whatever you want." We stopped at her favorite place, and I watched her demolish 2 slices while chattering about her day. A quiz she'd aced, a disagreement with Madison about who was faster at multiplication, plans for an upcoming field trip. Normal 9-year-old concerns, blissfully unaware that her world was fracturing. Emily arrived home at 6:15, carrying her briefcase and wearing the slightly frazzled expression of someone who'd had a long day at the office. She kissed Lily's head, squeezed my shoulder in passing, and asked about our evening with every appearance of genuine interest. "How was your trip?" she asked me, pulling leftovers from the refrigerator. "Productive," I said. "Wrapped up earlier than expected." "That's good." She was scrolling through her phone as she spoke. "I had the day from hell. 3 hours of meetings, and Peterson is still dragging his feet on the Q4 projections." The lies flowed so smoothly. I wondered if she'd practiced them, or if deception had simply become second nature. That night, after Lily was asleep, Emily and I sat on opposite ends of the couch watching a show neither of us cared about. She was on her phone intermittently, smiling at messages I couldn't see. I pretended to read emails on my laptop while actually researching private investigators. "I'm exhausted," Emily announced around 10:30. "I'm going to bed." "I'll be up soon," I said. She kissed the top of my head, another casual gesture of false affection, and disappeared upstairs. I waited until I heard the bedroom door close, then pulled up the Find My app again. Her phone remained stationary in our bedroom. I opened a new browser tab and searched for the BMW's license plate number, which I'd memorized. The search yielded nothing useful without access to DMV databases, but I had another approach. I pulled up the Charlotte Business Registry and started searching for art dealers and galleries. Emily had mentioned art occasionally over the years. She'd taken an art history class in college, sometimes dragged me to gallery openings she claimed were networking events. I'd thought it was just a casual interest, background noise to her real career in pharmaceutical marketing. Now I wondered what else I'd dismissed as casual interest. The third gallery I found, Ashford Fine Arts on Providence Road, had a website featuring upcoming exhibitions and artist profiles. The About page included staff photographs. And there, listed as Acquisitions Consultant, was the man from the parking lot. Julian Ashford. According to his bio, he specialized in 19th and early 20th century European paintings, with particular expertise in authentication and provenance research. He'd worked at Christie's in New York before opening his own gallery in Charlotte 5 years ago. 5 years. We'd been living here for 6. I clicked through the gallery's exhibition history, looking for any connection to Emily's pharmaceutical company. Nothing obvious. But then I found it, buried in a news article from 18 months ago about a charity auction benefiting the arts. The event had been sponsored by several local companies, including Emily's employer. A photograph showed donors and organizers. Emily stood in the back row, barely visible. Julian Ashford was front and center, shaking hands with the mayor. 18 months. I closed the laptop and sat in the darkness of our living room, listening to the house settle around me. Upstairs, my wife slept in our bed, her phone within reach in case her lover sent a good-night message. Down the hall, our daughter dreamed innocent dreams. They say the worst part of betrayal is the moment of discovery, but that's not quite right. The worst part is the recalculation, going back through every memory, every conversation, every moment you thought was real, and wondering what was true and what was performance. I thought about 18 months of late nights and business trips and distracted smiles. 18 months of "I love you" and "How was your day?" and making love in the dark while she thought about someone else. But even then, sitting alone at 2 in the morning with the taste of my wife's lies still bitter in my mouth, I didn't know the full scope of what I'd uncovered. I thought I was dealing with an affair, painful, destructive, but comprehensible. I had no idea yet that the man in the expensive linen shirt wasn't just stealing my wife. He was stealing from everyone. I spent the rest of that Tuesday in a strange, dissociative state, going through the motions of normalcy while my mind worked through the implications of what I'd discovered. I picked up Lily from school, made dinner, helped her with homework. When Emily came home at 7:30, I kissed her cheek and asked about her day. "Exhausting," she said, setting down her bag with a sigh that seemed entirely genuine. "Back-to-back meetings all afternoon. I'm starving." I'd saved her a plate, watched her eat leftover chicken and roasted vegetables while she told me about a product launch timeline that needed adjusting. She was so convincing, so natural. If I hadn't seen her with my own eyes that afternoon, I would never have suspected a thing. That's what 17 years of marriage gets you, the ability to lie with complete authenticity. After Lily went to bed, Emily curled up next to me on the couch while we watched a documentary about deep-sea exploration. Her head rested on my shoulder. Her hand found mine. All the familiar gestures of intimacy, now revealed as performance art. I let her play her role. I played mine. Because while she'd been lying to me, I'd been thinking. And what I'd realized was this. The affair itself, devastating as it was, might be only part of the story. Emily had never shown any particular interest in art before. She'd humor me when I suggested museum visits, but she'd never initiated them. Never spent time studying paintings or reading about artists. Yet she'd been involved with Julian Ashford, a man whose entire professional identity revolved around fine art, for at least 18 months. People don't sustain long-term affairs based solely on physical attraction. They connect over shared interests, common ground. And Emily had no natural affinity for Julian's world, unless she developed one, or unless there was something else connecting them. I thought about Emily's recent business trips. 3 in the past 6 months, each lasting 2 or 3 days. Boston, New York, Miami, all cities with major art markets. I'd never questioned them. Her company had offices in multiple locations, and travel was part of her job. Or so she'd told me. I thought about the uptick in our bank account over the past year. Nothing dramatic, but noticeable. Emily had explained it as performance bonuses. Her company was doing well, she'd said. They were rewarding top performers. I'd believed her because I'd had no reason not to. Now I had reasons. Wednesday morning, I called in sick to work. First time in 3 years. Tom Brennan sounded genuinely concerned when I told him I had a stomach bug and needed the day. "Take care of yourself," he said. "We've got everything covered here." After Emily left for work and Lily for school, I started digging. Our home office had always been primarily mine. I used it for reviewing project plans and handling personal finances. Emily had a laptop she kept in the bedroom, claiming she preferred working from the comfort of the bed when she brought work home. I'd thought it was quirky, endearing even. Now I understood it was territorial, protective. But she also had files in the office, a small filing cabinet with 2 drawers, ostensibly for household documents and her personal records. I'd never had reason to look through it. We trusted each other. Past tense. The first drawer contained exactly what it should. Insurance documents, mortgage papers, Lily's school records, medical files. Everything organized with Emily's characteristic precision. The second drawer was locked. I stared at that lock for a long moment. This was a line I was crossing. An invasion of privacy that, in a healthy marriage, would be unconscionable. But we didn't have a healthy marriage. We had a lie I'd been living in. The lock was simple. The kind that comes standard on filing cabinets, meant more for privacy than security. I found a paper clip, straightened it, and had the drawer open in under a minute. Civil engineers understand mechanical systems, including locks. Inside, I found a world I hadn't known existed. The first thing I pulled out was a manila folder labeled Ashford Transactions. Inside were receipts, invoices, and correspondence, all related to art sales. But not art sales through Ashford Fine Arts Gallery. These were private transactions, documented on plain letterhead with no business name attached. I spread the papers across my desk. A Monet watercolor sold to a private collector in Boston for $340,000. Emily's name on the invoice as authentication consultant. Her fee, $85,000. A Degas sketch sold to a collector in Manhattan for $180,000. Emily listed as provenance specialist. Fee, $45,000. A small Renoir oil painting sold to a Miami collector for $520,000. Emily's role, acquisition specialist. Fee, $130,000. The dates ranged over the past 14 months. The total fees added up to just over $400,000. $400,000. I sat back in my chair, trying to process what I was seeing. Emily wasn't just having an affair with an art dealer. She was working with him, selling art. High-value pieces by major impressionist masters, sold to private collectors in cities she'd recently visited for work. But Emily knew nothing about art authentication, nothing about provenance research, nothing about the technical aspects of evaluating masterworks, which meant either she'd developed an entire expert skill set without my knowledge, or the expertise wasn't real. The credentials weren't real. I thought about Julian Ashford's gallery, his reputation, the way Emily had looked at him in that parking lot, not just with affection but with partnership. Conspiracy. I pulled out my phone and started researching art fraud. What I found made my blood run cold. The art market is notoriously opaque. Private sales happen all the time, with minimal oversight. Provenance, the documented history of a piece's ownership, can be fabricated. Authentication is often subjective, relying on expert opinion rather than scientific proof. And the market is flooded with forgeries, some so sophisticated that even major museums have been fooled. If you had a skilled forger and a convincing backstory, you could sell fake masterpieces to wealthy collectors who would never know the difference. Especially if those collectors were buying for private enjoyment rather than public display. Especially if they trusted the gallery and the specialists involved. Especially if they wanted to believe they were getting a deal on a genuine masterpiece. I kept digging through the drawer, found more folders, more transactions. A pattern emerged. Julian would acquire a piece through his gallery connections. Emily would provide authentication and provenance documentation. They'd sell to a private collector at a price slightly below market value, enough to make the buyer feel they'd gotten a bargain, not so low as to raise suspicion. And they'd split the profits. But where were the paintings coming from? How was Julian acquiring museum-quality impressionist works with enough frequency to sustain this operation? At the back of the drawer, I found a folder labeled Studio Expenses. Inside were receipts for art supplies, canvas, oil paints, solvents, varnishes, antique frames purchased from estate sales, chemical aging agents, pigment analysis equipment, and rental payments for a storage unit. Not a small one, a climate-controlled space at a facility 15 minutes from our house. The rental agreement was in Emily's name. I looked at the address, looked at the receipts, looked at the invoices for paintings sold. Julian wasn't acquiring masterpieces, he was creating them. And Emily wasn't just his lover, she was his business partner in an international art forgery operation. I sat in that office for hours, reading through every document, photographing every page with my phone. The scope of what they'd built was staggering. Over the past 14 months, they'd sold at least 9 pieces that I could document. Total revenue, over $2 million. And these were just the transactions Emily had kept records of at home. There might be more. I thought about the collectors who'd bought these pieces. Wealthy people, certainly, but not necessarily sophisticated about art. Doctors, lawyers, tech entrepreneurs, successful professionals who wanted to own something beautiful and prestigious. Who trusted the gallery, trusted the authentication, trusted the lie. I thought about museums. The documents mentioned 3 pieces that had been sold to smaller regional museums. Institutions that relied on donor funding and couldn't afford the top-tier authentication services that major museums used. Places where a convincing provenance document and a reputable gallery's word would be enough. Those museums had fake paintings hanging on their walls. Their visitors were viewing forgeries. Their donors had funded the acquisition of worthless canvases. And Emily had made this possible, had provided the paperwork, the credentials, the veneer of legitimacy that turned Julian's forgeries into authenticated masterpieces. My wife, the woman I'd built a life with, the mother of my daughter, a criminal. I spent the rest of that morning photographing everything. Every document, every email printout, every handwritten note. I used my phone first, then realized I needed better quality and retrieved my DSLR from upstairs. The camera I'd bought to photograph Lily's soccer games was now documenting my wife's criminal enterprise. The technical specifications were damning. One document detailed the exact pigment composition Julian used to replicate 19th century paint formulations. Another outlined his aging techniques, how he artificially cracked oil paint to simulate century-old deterioration. There were photographs of works in progress, canvases treated to look authentically aged, frames sourced from estate sales to provide genuine period housing for fraudulent art. Emily had kept meticulous records of their sales pipeline. A spreadsheet tracked potential buyers, their areas of interest, their approximate net worth. She'd categorized them: vanity collectors, who wanted prestige pieces for their walls; investment buyers, seeking assets to appreciate; small institutions with limited authentication budgets. Each category had different vulnerabilities she'd noted how to exploit. The Grantham Museum in Ohio had purchased what they believed was a Monet water lily study for $287,000. The authentication letter Emily provided referenced a fictional 1920s Paris gallery and a provenance chain she'd entirely fabricated. The museum's website still featured the piece prominently in their Impressionist gallery. A private collector in San Francisco had paid $340,000 for a Renoir portrait that Julian had painted in their garage, or wherever he was actually working. I still didn't know where that was. The storage unit address appeared on a rental agreement. Secure Space Storage on Westinghouse Boulevard, Unit 247. The monthly charge of $189 had been automatically debiting from an account I'd never seen statements for. Climate-controlled, 10x 15 feet. Large enough for what? Completed forgeries awaiting sale, art supplies, more documentation. I photographed the rental agreement, the key taped to the back of the document. By 11:30, I'd documented everything. I carefully returned each file to its original position, closed the cabinet, and locked it. The bent paperclip went into my pocket. The office looked exactly as I'd found it. I sat at my desk with my laptop and started organizing the photographs into folders. Authentication documents, sales records, correspondence, technical specifications, financial records. I created a master document outlining the scheme's structure, the timeline, the known victims. My phone buzzed. Emily. Lunch meeting running long. Probably won't be home until 6. Can you pick up Lily? I stared at the message. Lunch meeting. Another lie in an endless series of lies. No problem, I typed back. See you tonight. I had until 6 o'clock, 5.5 hours. I pulled up Secure Space Storage's website. They had gate access codes for renters, security cameras, climate-controlled units. Their hours listed 6 a.m. to 10 p.m. daily access. The smart move would be to wait. To consult an attorney first, maybe a private investigator. To plan carefully before taking any action that might compromise potential evidence. But I'd already broken into Emily's filing cabinet. I'd already crossed the line from suspicious husband to active investigator. And I needed to know the full scope of what she'd done. I needed to see what was in that storage unit. The facility was a sprawling complex of identical beige buildings off a commercial strip near the airport. I pulled into the lot at 1:15, the rental agreement and key in my jacket pocket. The gate required a 4-digit code. I tried Emily's birthday, 0614. The gate didn't move. I tried Lily's birthday, 0315. Nothing. Then I tried the last 4 digits of Emily's social security number, which I knew from our tax returns. The gate rolled open. I drove through, following the building numbers. Unit 247 was in Building C, 2nd floor. I parked near the elevator and rode up, my heart hammering against my ribs. The hallway was fluorescent lit and silent. My footsteps echoed on the concrete floor. Unit 247 was halfway down, marked with a number plate and a heavy padlock. The key turned smoothly. I lifted the rolling door and hit the light switch inside. The unit was packed with art. Canvases lined the walls, some framed, some not. A work table held paint supplies, brushes, jars of medium, tubes of pigment. There were reference books, volumes on impressionist techniques, authentication methods, art history. A laptop sat closed on the table. Boxes were labeled with names: Casat. In progress. Pissarro. Ready. Sisley. Needs aging. I stepped inside, pulling the door down behind me. The finished pieces were extraordinary. A Degas ballerina, delicate and luminous. A Monet landscape with that distinctive light he'd captured. A Renoir portrait of a young woman, her skin rendered in those soft, glowing tones. They were beautiful. They were masterful. They were completely fake. I photographed everything. The canvases, the supplies, the reference materials. I opened the laptop, password protected. I photographed the boxes, their contents, the labels. One box held completed authentication documents, blank letterhead from galleries that probably didn't exist anymore, provenance templates ready to be filled in with fictional histories. Another contained period-appropriate frames, clearly salvaged from actual antique paintings. The frames real, the art inside them fraudulent. A filing box held more financial records, bank statements for accounts I'd never heard of, wire transfer confirmations from buyers, a ledger tracking expenses, canvas, pigments, frames, travel costs for Emily's sales meetings. The total sales figure I calculated from the documents was staggering. $2.7 million over approximately 18 months. Emily and Julian had split the proceeds, with Emily taking slightly more, presumably because she handled authentication and client relations while Julian merely created the forgeries. They'd been careful. Sales were spaced out, never too many too quickly. They targeted different regions, different types of buyers. They avoided major auction houses with sophisticated authentication departments, focusing instead on private sales in smaller institutions. But they'd left a trail. Every document here was evidence. Every fake painting was a federal crime. I spent 90 minutes in that unit, photographing everything, taking notes, building a comprehensive picture of the operation. The scope was larger than I'd initially understood. The documents from Emily's filing cabinet had shown 9 sales. The records here indicated at least 15, possibly more. 15 museums, galleries, or private collectors who'd paid hundreds of thousands of dollars for paintings created in a storage unit by my wife's lover. I finally left at 3 o'clock, carefully locking the unit behind me, making sure everything looked undisturbed. The gate rolled open automatically as I exited. I sat in my car in a grocery store parking lot, hands shaking, and called the one person I trusted to give me legal advice without judgment. David Patterson had been my college roommate, now a criminal defense attorney in Atlanta. We'd stayed close over the years, standing up at each other's weddings, visiting when we could. He answered on the second ring. "Robert, what's going on?" "I need advice, legal advice, and I need you to not ask me if I'm sure about what I'm about to tell you." A pause. "That's a hell of an opening. Go ahead." I told him everything. The affair, the forgery operation, the documentation, the storage unit. He listened without interrupting, his silence somehow more intense than any response. When I finished, he was quiet for a long moment. "You're talking about federal art fraud," he finally said. "FBI jurisdiction, not local police. This is major, Robert. Really major." "I know. And you're sitting on evidence of ongoing criminal activity, multiple felonies, conspiracy, fraud, probably wire fraud if they used electronic communications for sales." "I know," I repeated. "What do you want to do?" That was the question, wasn't it? What did I want? I wanted my wife back, the woman I'd married, the mother of my daughter, but that woman had never existed, or she'd disappeared so long ago I couldn't remember when I'd last actually seen her. I wanted my life back. But that life had been built on lies. I wanted justice. That, at least, was possible. I want to burn it all down, I said. I spent the next 2 days in a kind of controlled frenzy, methodical but relentless. David had told me to sit tight, to let him think through the strategy. But I couldn't sit still. Every moment I wasn't at work or with Lily felt like wasted time, like giving Emily and Julian another opportunity to cover their tracks or disappear. I returned to the storage unit twice more, each time photographing different angles, making sure I had documentation of every painting, every supply, every scrap of paper. I organized the files on my laptop into folders: financial records, authentication documents, correspondence with buyers, photographs of the forgeries. I backed everything up to 3 different cloud services and an external hard drive that I locked in my desk at work. Emily noticed nothing. Or if she did, she gave no sign. She came home each evening around 6:30, kissed Lily, asked about homework and piano practice. She'd glance at me with that same distant warmth she'd shown for months now, present, but not really there. We'd eat dinner together, the 3 of us, and I'd watch her across the table, marveling at how easily she inhabited this role. The devoted mother. The professional woman tired from a long day at the office. I wondered if Julian was tired too. If his hands ached from mixing pigments and applying careful brush strokes to canvas. If he went home to his own life, I'd discovered through public records that he was divorced, no children, and felt anything at all about what they were doing. On Thursday evening, Emily mentioned she had a business dinner the following night. "Client meeting," she said, loading the dishwasher. "Probably won't be back until 10 or so." "Which client?" I asked. She didn't hesitate. "Meridian Health Systems. They're considering our new cardiovascular line." The lie came so smoothly. So practiced. "Sounds important," I said. "It is." She closed the dishwasher and turned to me, and for just a moment something flickered across her face. Guilt, maybe, or concern. "You okay? You've seemed distracted this week." "Just work stress," I said. "We're behind on the Monroe project." She nodded, accepting this, and the moment passed. She went upstairs to help Lily with her bath, and I stood alone in the kitchen, gripping the edge of the counter until my knuckles went white. David called me Friday afternoon. "I've been doing research," he said without preamble. "Art fraud falls under federal jurisdiction. Wire fraud, mail fraud, potentially money laundering if they moved funds across state lines. The FBI has a dedicated art crime team, based in D.C., but they work cases nationwide." "Okay," I said. "Robert, this is serious. We're not talking about divorce court anymore. We're talking about federal prosecution. Emily could be looking at 20 years. I said nothing. "I need to know you understand that," David continued. "Once you go to the FBI, there's no taking it back. No changing your mind. This will destroy her life. It will destroy Lily's sense of her mother." "Her mother is a criminal," I said quietly. "She's been defrauding people for 18 months. Museums have fake paintings hanging on their walls because of her. Collectors have spent hundreds of thousands of dollars on worthless canvases." "I know. I'm not saying she doesn't deserve consequences. I'm saying you need to be certain." I looked out my office window at the Charlotte skyline, the buildings catching the late afternoon sun. Somewhere out there, Emily was probably with Julian. Maybe at his gallery. Maybe at another hotel. Maybe standing in whatever studio he actually used to create his forgeries, watching him work, planning their next sale. "I'm certain," I said, David was quiet for a moment. Then, all right, I have a contact. Special agent named Lauren Wright. She's with the art crime team. I can make an introduction, but after that, you're on your own. I'm a divorce attorney, not a criminal lawyer. You'll be a witness in a federal case. I understand. One more thing, David said. Before you do this, you need to talk to a criminal defense attorney yourself. Why? I didn't do anything. You broke into a storage unit. You photographed private documents. Depending on how a prosecutor wants to look at it, you could potentially face charges for that. It's unlikely, especially since you're bringing them evidence of a larger crime, but you need to protect yourself. I hadn't thought of that. The idea that my investigation could somehow make me culpable. Can you recommend someone? I asked. Yeah, I'll send you a name. Talk to him first, before you go to the FBI. Get immunity in writing if possible. Okay. And Robert? David's voice softened slightly. I'm sorry. I know this isn't how you wanted your marriage to end. No, I said. It's not. I met with David's criminal attorney contact, a sharp-eyed woman named Patricia Alvarez, on Monday morning. She listened to my story without interrupting, took notes in a leather-bound notebook, and asked pointed questions about exactly how I'd access the storage unit and Emily's filing cabinet. The storage unit is the bigger problem, she said. Breaking into your own home is murkier legally. You live there, you have a right to be there, and North Carolina doesn't have strong privacy laws between spouses. But the storage unit was rented in Julian Ashford's name. You had no legal right to enter it. So I could be charged? Possibly. Trespassing, breaking, and entering. But here's the thing. The FBI cares about the bigger fish. You're handing them an international art fraud case on a silver platter. They're not going to waste time prosecuting you for picking a lock. She tapped her pen against the notebook. That said, I want everything in writing. I'll reach out to the FBI contact your friend provided. We'll arrange a proffer agreement. Basically, you tell them everything, and they agree not to use your statements against you. Once they see what you have, I'll negotiate full immunity before you hand over any physical evidence. How long will that take? Depends on how motivated they are. Could be a week, could be a month. I must have shown my frustration because she leaned forward, her expression sympathetic but firm. I know you want this done yesterday, but if you rush this and screw it up, your wife walks free and you end up with a criminal record. Let me do my job. She was right. I knew she was right. But every day that passed was another day Emily came home and kissed our daughter goodnight. Another day, she looked at me across the breakfast table and asked if I wanted more coffee. Another day, she lived her double life, untouched and unaware. 1 week, I said. If we don't have movement in 1 week, I'm going to the FBI myself. Patricia studied me for a long moment, then nodded. 1 week. She moved faster than I expected. By Wednesday, she called to tell me she'd spoken with Special Agent Lauren Wright, who was very interested in what I had. They were preparing a proffer agreement. By Friday, I was sitting in Patricia's office, signing documents that promised the federal government wouldn't prosecute me for my investigative methods in exchange for my full cooperation. They want to meet with you Monday, Patricia said. FBI field office in Charlotte. You'll bring copies of everything, photos, documents, all of it. They'll interview you, probably for several hours. They'll want every detail you can remember. And then what? Then they investigate. They'll verify your evidence, probably conduct their own surveillance of Emily and Julian. They'll build a case. When they're ready, they'll make arrests. How long? Months, probably. Federal cases take time. I felt something cold settle in my chest. Months of continuing this charade. Months of pretending I didn't know. Months of watching Emily lie to my face. I can't do that, I said. I can't live with her for months knowing what I know. Patricia's expression was understanding. Then don't. File for divorce. Move out. But Robert, you cannot tell her why. You cannot tip her off about the federal investigation. If you do, she and Julian will destroy evidence, flee the country, or both. You'll ruin the case. So I just, what? Tell her I want a divorce and leave it at that? Tell her you're unhappy. Tell her you've grown apart. Tell her whatever you need to tell her. But you cannot mention the forgeries or the affair until after the FBI makes their arrests. I sat back in my chair, the weight of it pressing down on me. I'd thought exposing Emily would bring some kind of resolution, some sense of justice. Instead, it was just creating more lies, more deception. I'd have to become what she was, someone living a double life, pretending everything was fine while working toward her destruction. The irony wasn't lost on me. Okay, I said finally. I'll do it your way. Patricia nodded. Monday, 9 a.m., FBI field office on Subtle Avenue. Don't be late. I sat in the parking lot of a Starbucks 3 blocks from our house, my laptop balanced on the steering wheel, waiting for Special Agent Wright's call. She'd said 2 o'clock. It was now 2:07. The past 48 hours had been a masterclass in deception. I'd come home from my business trip Tuesday evening, hugged Lily, kissed Emily on the cheek like nothing had changed. We'd had dinner, chicken piccata, one of Emily's specialties. She'd asked about the conference. I'd invented details about presentations I hadn't attended, colleagues I hadn't seen. She'd believed every word, because that's what we did now. We lied to each other with practiced ease. My phone buzzed. Not right. A text from Emily. Working late tonight. Client dinner. Don't wait up. I stared at the message. Client dinner. Right. More likely she was meeting Julian, celebrating another successful sale, planning their next forgery. Or maybe they were together right now, in that apartment with the floor-to-ceiling windows, laughing about how oblivious I was. Except I wasn't oblivious anymore. I typed back, no problem. I'll make sure Lily gets to bed. 3 dots appeared, then disappeared. Then, thanks. Love you. The casual cruelty of it made my jaw clench. Love you. 2 words she'd typed thousands of times over 13 years of marriage. 2 words that meant absolutely nothing now. My phone rang. Wright's number. Mr. Chambers, she said when I answered. I've reviewed the materials you provided. I need you to walk me through exactly what you found and where. I spent the next 20 minutes detailing everything. The filing cabinet, the storage unit, the documents, the paintings. Wright asked precise questions, took notes I could hear her typing. She had the methodical attention to detail I recognized from my own profession. Every measurement mattered. Every specification had to be exact. The storage unit, she said. You accessed it how? The key was in the filing cabinet. The rental agreement had the gate code and unit number. And you're certain your wife doesn't know you've been inside? Positive. I photographed everything exactly as I found it, then replaced it all in the same positions. I was careful. A pause. Mr. Chambers, I need to be clear about something. What you did, breaking into your wife's personal property, accessing a storage unit rented in her name, that's legally problematic. The proffer agreement protects you from prosecution for those actions, but it also means any defense attorney will argue the evidence was obtained illegally. I understand. Do you? Because if this goes to trial, your actions will be scrutinized. Your wife's attorney will paint you as a jealous husband who manufactured evidence. They'll question every document, every photograph. The paintings are real, I said. The forgeries are real. You can verify that independently. We will, but verification takes time. We'll need to contact the documented buyers, examine the pieces they purchased, bring in authenticators. This isn't a quick process. How long? Months, possibly longer. Art fraud cases are complex. We're talking about international sales, multiple jurisdictions, questions of authentication that require expert testimony. The U.S. Attorney's Office won't move forward until we have an airtight case. I'd expected this. Patricia Alvarez had warned me the same thing, but hearing it from Wright made it real in a different way. What do you need from me? I asked. Access to the storage unit. We'll need to document everything ourselves, seize the paintings and materials as evidence. I'll coordinate with local Charlotte FBI to execute a search warrant. When? Next week, most likely. I'm flying to Charlotte on Friday to personally oversee this. The art crime team doesn't have a lot of agents. We handle cases nationwide. So when something like this comes up, we move on it directly. She paused. But Mr. Chambers, here's the critical part. Your wife cannot know we're investigating. If she gets spooked, if she and Ashford realize we're onto them, they'll destroy evidence. Flee the country, possibly. We've seen it before. She won't know. You're planning to file for divorce. That's going to raise questions. I'll handle it carefully. Make it about the affair, not the forgeries. She'll think I only know about Julian as her lover, not as her business partner. Wright was quiet for a moment. You've thought this through. I'm an engineer. I think everything through. Then think about this. When we arrest your wife, when this becomes public, your daughter will be affected. The media will cover this. Art fraud involving museums, international sales, sophisticated forgeries. This is going to be a major story. Lily. God. I'd been so focused on Emily's betrayal, on gathering evidence and planning my revenge, that I hadn't fully processed what this would do to our daughter. I know, I said quietly. Do you have family support? People who can help you with your daughter when this breaks? My parents are in Florida. Emily's parents are in Boston. We have friends here, but I trailed off. How did you explain to friends that your wife was a criminal? That the woman they'd known for years, had dinner parties with, whose daughter played with their kids? How did you tell them she'd been living a double life? You should consider counseling for your daughter, Wright said. A child psychologist who specializes in family trauma. This is going to be difficult for her. I will. Good. I heard papers shuffling. I'm going to need you to sign some additional documentation for the proffer agreement. I'll email it to you tonight. And Mr. Chambers, until we execute the search warrant, you need to stay away from that storage unit. No more visits. We can't risk your wife noticing any changes, no matter how small. Understood. One more thing. Do you have any idea where Ashford actually creates these forgeries? The storage unit is clearly just for finished pieces and supplies, but the active workspace has to be somewhere else. I'd been thinking about this. Emily mentioned once that Julian has a studio space. She said it was in an old textile mill that's been converted to artist lofts. There are several of those in Charlotte. The arts district has been expanding. That's helpful. We'll look into it. Wright paused. You're doing the right thing, Mr. Chambers. I know this is personal for you, but what your wife and Ashford have done, it's not just fraud. They've damaged the integrity of the art market, sold fake pieces to institutions that trusted them. Museums have limited budgets. When they spend money on a forgery, that's funding that could have gone to genuine art, to education programs, to preservation. What they've done has real consequences. I know. But what I was thinking was simpler, colder. Emily had real consequences coming too. We ended the call. I sat in the Starbucks parking lot, watching people come and go with their lattes and frappuccinos, living their normal lives. A mother with two small children. A businessman in a suit checking his phone. A teenage couple holding hands. Normal people. Honest people. I used to be one of them. My phone buzzed again. David Patterson this time, my attorney friend in Atlanta. Talked to a family law colleague in Charlotte. She's excellent. Name is Rebecca Walsh. Sending you her contact info. She'll be ready when you are. I typed back, thanks. Probably filing next week. Next week, after the FBI seized the storage unit. After the evidence was secure and Emily couldn't destroy it. Then I'd file for divorce, move out, and watch her world collapse piece by piece. The way mine had collapsed when I'd seen her kiss Julian Ashford in that parking lot. The way it had shattered when I'd opened that filing cabinet and realized my entire marriage was a lie. I started the car and headed home. Lily would be getting back from school soon. I'd promised to help her with her science project, something about the water cycle, condensation, and precipitation. Simple, straightforward, governed by natural laws that didn't change. Unlike people. Unlike trust. Unlike the woman I'd married 13 years ago, who'd looked at me across a crowded bar in Atlanta and smiled like I was the only person in the world who mattered. That woman didn't exist. Maybe she never had. But I was going to make sure the woman who'd replaced her paid for every lie, every betrayal, every forged painting sold under false pretenses. Special Agent Wright had said this would take months. I could wait. I'd been waiting my whole marriage, after all. Waiting for Emily to come home from her business trips. Waiting for her to explain why she was always on her phone. Waiting, trusting, believing. Now I was done waiting. Now I was just counting down. The next 3 days were an exercise in controlled deception. I went to work, reviewed structural calculations, attended project meetings, discussed foundation specifications for the new medical center in Ballantyne. I came home. I had dinner with my wife and daughter. I helped Lily with her homework, long division, a book report on Bridge to Terabithia. I kissed Emily goodnight. And every moment I was aware that I was living in a house built on lies. Emily seemed relaxed, almost cheerful. She'd stopped being quite so protective of her phone, though she still carried it everywhere. I wondered if she thought she'd successfully deflected my suspicions with her performance about the client dinner, the convenient details about the restaurant she'd never actually visited. On Thursday evening, I sat at my desk in the home office, ostensibly reviewing bid documents for a highway interchange project. In reality, I was going through the photographs I'd taken at the storage unit, organizing them into folders for Agent Wright. Monet forgeries, Renoir forgeries, Degas, Caillebotte. Each folder contained images of the paintings themselves, close-ups of Julian's signature techniques, shots of the authentication documents Emily had created. The documentation was damning, meticulous, complete. My phone buzzed. A text from Agent Wright. Search warrant approved. Execution scheduled for Saturday 6 a.m. We'll need you available by phone in case we have questions about the layout or contents. I stared at the message. Saturday, 2 days away. Understood. I typed back. I'll be available. One more thing, she replied. We've been monitoring communications. Your wife received a call this afternoon from a number registered to Julian Ashford. 17-minute conversation. We couldn't intercept content, but thought you should know. My jaw tightened. 17 minutes. What were they discussing? Another sale? Another forgery commission? Or were they planning their next romantic rendezvous while I played the oblivious husband? Thank you for the update, I sent back. I closed the text thread and sat in the silence of my office. Downstairs, I could hear Emily laughing at something on television. The sound that used to make me smile now felt like fingernails on glass. Friday morning, I woke to find Emily already up, dressed in dark jeans and a cashmere sweater I'd bought her for Christmas 2 years ago. She was applying lipstick in the bathroom mirror, her movements practiced and efficient. You're up early, I said, keeping my voice neutral. Meeting a client for breakfast, she said, without turning around. New authentication project. Could be lucrative. Authentication project. The audacity was breathtaking. Which client? I asked. Now she did turn, and I saw a flicker of something in her eyes. Annoyance? Suspicion? Private collector in Winston-Salem, she said smoothly. He's considering purchasing a Pissarro landscape and wants independent verification before he commits. I mentioned it last week, remember? She hadn't mentioned it, but I nodded anyway. Right, I said. What time will you be back? Probably mid-afternoon. I need to examine the piece in person, review the provenance documentation. She picked up her purse. The expensive leather one I'd noticed before, the one that cost more than my monthly car payment. Can you pick up Lily from school? She has that playdate with Ashley at 3:30. Sure, I said. She kissed my cheek, and I forced myself not to pull away. Her perfume was different, something expensive and unfamiliar. Had Julian bought it for her? Love you, she said, already moving toward the door. Love you too, I replied automatically. The words tasted like ashes. I waited 30 minutes after she left, then pulled up the tracking app on my phone. Emily's location marker showed her heading northwest on I-77, exactly the route she'd take to Winston-Salem. Maybe she was actually meeting a client. Maybe this particular lie was true. Or maybe she'd learned to cover her tracks better. I called Patricia Alvarez. Robert, she answered on the second ring. Everything all right? Emily's meeting a client this morning, I said. She claims it's about authenticating a Pissarro. I'm wondering if I should tell Agent Wright. Already on it, Patricia said. Wright's team has been monitoring both Emily and Julian. If they meet, the FBI will know. What happens if they're tipped off somehow? If they realize they're under investigation? They won't, Patricia said firmly. The surveillance is sophisticated, and tomorrow's warrant execution will happen fast. They'll hit the storage unit before either of them knows what's happening. And after that? After that, the investigation goes into high gear. Wright will need to authenticate each forgery, track down every buyer, build the criminal case. It'll take months. But the evidence you've provided gives them an enormous head start. I looked out the window at our backyard, at the deck where we'd hosted birthday parties and summer barbecues, where Lily had blown out 9 candles just 2 months ago. What about Lily? I asked quietly. When this becomes public, when Emily's arrested, how do I protect her from it? Patricia was silent for a moment. When she spoke, her voice was gentler than I'd heard before. You can't protect her from all of it, she said, but you can control the narrative. You can be the stable parent, the one who tells her the truth in age-appropriate ways. And you can make sure the divorce decree includes provisions about media contact, about what Emily can and can't say publicly. Will that be enough? No, Patricia said honestly, but it's what you have. I picked up Lily from school at 3:15. She bounded out of the building with Ashley, both girls laughing about something their teacher had said during science class. Watching her, so innocent, so unaware that her world was about to fracture, made my chest physically hurt. "Dad," she called, waving. "Ashley's mom said we can make cookies." "Sounds great, sweetheart," I said, managing a smile. Ashley's mother, Jennifer, approached with her usual friendly expression. "I'll have her back by 6, she said. "That work for you?" "Perfect, thank you." Lily hugged me quickly, then ran off with Ashley toward Jennifer's SUV. I watched them go, thinking about all the normal moments that were about to end. The playdates and school pickups and casual conversations with other parents. Once Emily was arrested, once the news broke, everything would change. We'd become that family, the one people whispered about, the one whose drama played out in news headlines and courtroom proceedings. My phone buzzed. Another text from Agent Wright. Subject's vehicle currently parked at 1847 Brookwood Avenue, Winston-Salem. Residential address, not gallery or commercial location. She's been inside for 40 minutes. Registered owner, Julian Ashford. I read the message twice, feeling the familiar cold fury settle in my stomach. No client. No Pissarro authentication. Just another lie. Another afternoon with her lover while I played babysitter and fool. "Thank you," I texted back. I sat in my car in the school parking lot, hands gripping the steering wheel, breathing slowly through my nose. Tomorrow morning, FBI agents would execute a search warrant on that storage unit. They'd photograph every forgery, seize every document, collect every piece of evidence that would eventually send Emily and Julian to federal prison. And I would be here, in Charlotte, maintaining the fiction of normalcy for just a few more hours. My phone rang. Patricia Alvarez. "I saw Wright's update," she said without preamble. "You holding up?" "I'm fine." "Robert, you don't have to be fine. You're allowed to be angry." "I'm past angry," I said quietly. "I'm just done." "Good," Patricia said, "because tomorrow everything changes. Are you ready for that?" I thought about Emily, currently at Julian's house in Winston-Salem, probably in his bed, completely unaware that her carefully constructed criminal enterprise was about to collapse. I thought about the museums displaying worthless forgeries, the collectors who'd paid hundreds of thousands for sophisticated fakes, the trust and money my wife had stolen while I'd worked 60-hour weeks and believed her lies. "Yes," I said, "I'm ready." The rest of Thursday passed in excruciating slow motion. I worked from home, ostensibly to finish the Wilmington proposal, but really because I couldn't trust myself to maintain composure around colleagues. Every sound from upstairs, Emily's footsteps, the murmur of her voice on calls, felt like sandpaper against my nerves. She came down around 3, dressed for the gym in expensive athleisure that probably cost more than my first car. "I'm meeting Claire for yoga," she said, kissing my cheek. The casual intimacy of it made my skin crawl. "Then we're grabbing dinner. Girls' night. I'll be home around 9. Claire was her college roommate who lived in Raleigh, 3 hours away. An easily verifiable alibi if I bothered to check, which meant this lie was probably true. Or Emily had grown sophisticated enough to layer her deceptions, mixing real plans with fabricated ones to establish credibility. "Have fun," I said, not looking up from my laptop. After she left, I sat in the silence of our house and felt the weight of everything I knew pressing down on me. 48 hours until the FBI raid. 2 days of pretending I didn't know my wife was a criminal. 2 days of living with a stranger wearing Emily's face. I thought about calling David Patterson again, just to hear a friendly voice, but he'd already done more than enough. The immunity agreement was signed. The evidence was delivered. Now I just had to wait. Instead, I picked up Lily from school myself, something I rarely did on weekdays. Her face lit up when she saw my truck in the pickup line. "Dad, what are you doing here?" "Thought we could get ice cream," I said. "Just us." We went to the local place she loved, the one with the homemade waffle cones and ridiculous flavor combinations. She ordered something called Unicorn Explosion that was bright purple and covered in sprinkles. I got vanilla because my stomach couldn't handle anything more complicated. "Is everything okay?" Lily asked, swinging her legs from the picnic table bench. "You seem sad." Kids notice everything. I'd forgotten that, or maybe I'd been too distracted to remember. "Just work stuff," I said. "Nothing for you to worry about." She studied me with those sharp eyes that were all Emily's genetics, but somehow still innocent. "Mom's been working a lot too. She's always on her phone." "Yeah, she has," I forced a smile. "But that's boring adult stuff. Tell me about school. How's that science project coming?" She launched into an enthusiastic explanation of her volcano experiment, and I listened with the kind of desperate attention you give to things you're afraid might disappear. Because everything was about to change for her, and she had no idea. In a few days, her mother would be arrested. Our family would be destroyed. Her world would implode. And there was nothing I could do to protect her from it. Friday morning, Agent Wright called while I was dropping Lily at school. "Everything's set for tomorrow," she said. "Team assembles at 0500. We hit the storage unit at 0600. I need you to confirm Emily will be home when we execute the residential warrant." "She'll be here," I said. "She doesn't have any trips scheduled." "Good. We'll arrive at your residence at approximately 0630 after we've secured the storage facility. I need you to answer the door, act surprised, and stay out of the way. Do not warn her. Do not give her any opportunity to destroy evidence or flee." "I understand." "Mr. Chambers? Robert?" Her voice softened fractionally. "I know this is difficult, but you're doing the right thing." Was I? I honestly didn't know anymore. The right thing for justice, maybe. For the defrauded collectors, for the museums, for the integrity of the art world. But for Lily? For the 9-year-old girl who still thought her mother hung the moon? "Just catch them," I said. Emily came home from work Friday evening in a good mood. Suspiciously good, actually. She hummed while making dinner, poured herself a glass of wine, asked about my day with what almost seemed like genuine interest. "I'm thinking we should plan a family vacation," she said over pasta. "Maybe spring break. Lily's been asking about Disney World." I stared at her across the table. Did she really think we'd still be a family by spring break? Or was this part of the performance, maintaining the facade until the very end? "Sure," I said. "We can look at dates." "Great. I'll start researching hotels." She smiled at Lily. "What do you think, sweetie? Want to meet all the princesses?" Lily bounced in her seat. "Yes. Can we stay at the Castle Hotel?" "We'll see." I watched Emily interact with our daughter, patient, engaged, affectionate, and tried to reconcile this woman with the one who'd forged millions of dollars in fake art. Who'd built an elaborate criminal enterprise while pretending to be a pharmaceutical marketing director. Who'd lied to my face for 18 months? The cognitive dissonance was staggering. After Lily went to bed, Emily settled on the couch with her laptop. I have some work emails to catch up on, she said. I retreated to my office and tried to focus on anything other than what was coming. The Wilmington proposal was finished. My desk was organized. I had nothing left to distract me. At 11, I heard Emily's footsteps on the stairs. "Coming to bed?" she called. "In a bit. Want to finish this report?" There was no report. I just couldn't lie next to her. Not tonight. Not knowing that tomorrow morning federal agents would be breaking down doors and snapping handcuffs on her wrists. I stayed in my office until past 2, then crept upstairs to the guest room. Emily's bedroom door was closed, no light showing underneath. She was asleep, probably dreaming about Disney World and spring break vacations that would never happen. I lay in the narrow guest bed and stared at the ceiling, counting down the hours. 5:30 a.m. the FBI team would assemble. 6 a.m. they'd breach the storage unit. 6:30 they'd knock on our door. And then everything would detonate. My alarm went off at 5:45. I'd barely slept. Maybe an hour of fitful dozing around 4. I showered, dressed in jeans and a sweatshirt, and went downstairs to make coffee. The house was silent. Emily wouldn't wake up for another hour at least. She liked to sleep in on Saturdays, usually didn't emerge before 8. I stood at the kitchen window, watching the sky lighten from black to deep blue to pale gray. Somewhere across town, Agent Wright and her team were gearing up, strapping on tactical vests, checking weapons, reviewing the warrant. My phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. "In position. Stand by." Agent Wright. It was happening. I poured coffee I couldn't drink and waited. 6:15. The storage unit raid would be underway now. I imagined bolt cutters on the lock, agents flooding in with flashlights and cameras, cataloging the evidence I'd photographed. The canvases, the pigments, the authentication documents. All of it being seized, tagged, documented. 6:20. I heard movement upstairs. Emily was awake early. Of course she was. The universe had a cruel sense of timing. Her footsteps crossed the bedroom, then the bathroom door closed. Shower running. 6:25. My phone buzzed again. 5 minutes out. I walked to the front door and stood there, heart hammering. Through the sidelight window, I could see our quiet street. The Johnsons' house across the way. The Patels' minivan in their driveway. Everything normal and peaceful and about to be shattered. 6:28. 3 black SUVs turned onto our street, moving fast but without sirens. They pulled up to the curb in front of our house and 8 agents emerged. Agent Wright in front, her badge already visible on her vest. The shower was still running upstairs. Agent Wright reached the porch, raised her fist to knock. This was it. The moment everything ended. I opened the door before she could knock and stepped aside. "She's upstairs," I said quietly. "In the shower." Agent Wright nodded once, then gestured to her team. They flowed past me into my house like a dark tide, footsteps heavy on the stairs. And I stood there in my own entryway, listening to my wife's world collapse. The pounding on the bathroom door cut through the sound of running water like a gunshot. "FBI, open the door!" I stood at the bottom of the stairs, frozen, as Emily's scream pierced the air. The shower shut off. Frantic movement. Then her voice, shrill with panic. "What's happening? Robert? Robert!" Agent Wright's voice, calm and authoritative. "Emily Chambers, we have a warrant to search these premises. Get dressed and come out now." I don't, I need my husband, Robert. I couldn't move, couldn't speak. 6 agents were already spreading through our house, 2 in my office, 2 heading for the basement, 1 stationed at the back door. Professional, efficient, devastating. The bathroom door opened. Emily appeared at the top of the stairs in her bathrobe, hair dripping, face pale with confusion and fear. Her eyes found mine. Robert, what's going on? Why are the police here? Agent Wright stepped into view behind her. Mrs. Chambers, I'm Special Agent Lauren Wright with the FBI. We have warrants to search this residence and a storage unit registered in your name. You need to get dressed, now. Storage unit? I don't know what you're... Emily's eyes darted between Wright and me, and I saw the exact moment comprehension began to dawn. Robert, what did you do? I found my voice. I found the filing cabinet, Emily. I found the storage unit. I know everything. Her face went from pale to gray. She gripped the banister like it was the only thing keeping her upright. Mrs. Chambers, Wright said firmly. Get dressed. You have 3 minutes. They let Emily dress in the bedroom with a female agent present. I sat in the living room while the search continued around me. Agents photographed my office, removed Emily's laptop, bagged her phone. One of them was reading Miranda rights to someone on a phone call. Julian, I realized. They'd hit his location simultaneously. Lily was still asleep. I'd checked on her twice, making sure her door stayed closed, that she didn't wake up to see her mother in handcuffs. Agent Wright had promised they'd be discreet, but there was only so much discretion possible when 8 federal agents were tearing apart your house. Emily came downstairs flanked by 2 agents. She'd dressed in jeans and a sweater, her hair hastily pulled back. Her eyes were red but dry. Shock, probably. The crying would come later. She looked at me as they guided her past the living room. How could you do this? I'm Lily's mother. How could I? The words came out harder than I'd intended. You've been forging paintings and defrauding people for 18 months. You've been sleeping with Julian Ashford. You built an entire criminal enterprise while I trusted you, while I believed every lie you told me. It wasn't... She stopped, seemed to realize anything she said could be used against her. Her jaw clenched. I want a lawyer. Smart choice, Agent Wright said. You're going to need a good one. They took her out through the front door. I watched through the window as they put her in the back of an SUV, one agent's hand on her head to guide her in. Our neighbors were emerging now, the Johnsons on their porch, the Patels in their driveway, everyone watching as Emily Chambers, respected pharmaceutical executive and devoted mother, was driven away in federal custody. I stood there until the SUVs disappeared around the corner. Then I went upstairs to check on Lily. She woke up 20 minutes later to a house full of FBI agents and her mother gone. I did my best to explain. Mom had made some bad choices. She was helping the police with an investigation. She'd be back soon. The lies came easier than I'd expected. Maybe Emily had taught me something after all. Lily cried, asked for her mother. Didn't understand why the police had to take her, why they were going through our house, why everything was wrong. I held her and promised things would be okay, knowing it was another lie, but unable to offer anything else. By noon, the FBI had finished their search. Agent Wright handed me a receipt for everything they'd seized. 2 laptops, 3 phones, file boxes full of documents, Emily's tablet. My office looked like a tornado had hit it. What happens now? I asked. We process the evidence, interview buyers, authenticate the forgeries, build the case. Wright's expression was professional but not unkind. Your wife will be arraigned Monday. She'll probably make bail. First offense, community ties, not a flight risk despite the international scope. But she'll be under restrictions. Ankle monitor, travel limitations, no contact with Ashford. How long until trial? 8 months minimum, possibly longer. Federal cases move slowly. She paused. You should file for divorce immediately. Get ahead of the asset seizure. Asset seizure? Any money she made from the forgeries is subject to forfeiture. If it's in joint accounts, you need to separate your finances now. Get a good attorney. I thought about our savings account, the college fund for Lily, the investment portfolio we'd built together. How much of it was legitimate income versus proceeds from fraud? I have an attorney, I said. Use her. Wright handed me her card. You'll need to testify when this goes to trial. We'll be in touch. After they left, I called my parents in Florida, told them everything. My mother cried. My father asked what I needed. I said I didn't know yet. Then I called Rebecca Walsh, the divorce attorney David had recommended. I can see you Monday morning, she said after I'd explained the situation. 9 a.m. Bring all your financial documents, bank statements, tax returns, investment records, everything. Okay. Mr. Chambers, Robert, this is going to be ugly. Federal criminal charges, asset forfeiture, media attention. Are you prepared for that? I looked around my living room, at the couch where Emily and I had watched movies, the bookshelf full of photos from happier times, Lily's artwork on the refrigerator. No, I said honestly, but it's happening anyway. Emily made bail Monday afternoon. $250,000, secured by her parents' house in Boston. She came home wearing an ankle monitor and carrying a folder full of legal documents. I was in the kitchen when she walked in. Lily was at school. I'd kept her home Monday but sent her back Tuesday, trying to maintain some normalcy. We need to talk, Emily said. No, we don't. I filed for divorce this morning. My attorney will be in touch with yours. She set down her folder. Robert, please, just listen. To what? More lies? More excuses? I kept my voice level, controlled. You committed federal crimes, Emily. You defrauded museums and collectors out of millions of dollars. You had an affair. There's nothing left to talk about. I never meant to hurt you. The sheer audacity of that statement left me momentarily speechless. You never meant to hurt me, I repeated. You just accidentally built a criminal enterprise with your lover. You accidentally forged paintings and sold them under false pretenses. You accidentally lied to my face every single day for 18 months. It started small, she said quietly. Julian needed help with paperwork for a sale. Just documentation, he said. I didn't know at first that the paintings were fake. When did you know? She looked away. 6 months in. Maybe 8. He told me the truth and I should have walked away. I know that. But the money was so good, and it was exciting, and you chose it over our marriage, over our daughter, over basic human decency. I'm sorry. You're sorry you got caught. I pulled out the separation agreement Rebecca had drafted. You're moving out, today. You can take your clothes and personal items. Everything else stays. This is my house, too. This is a crime scene. The FBI has already seized half our assets. The rest is going to be frozen during the divorce proceedings. I slid the papers across the counter. Sign it, or I'll make sure the prosecutor knows you're not cooperating with the investigation. It was a bluff. I had no leverage with the U.S. Attorney's Office, but Emily didn't know that. She signed. The next 8 months were a special kind of hell. The media picked up the story within days. Local couple's art forgery ring defrauds museums, collectors. Emily's mugshot was everywhere. Our house was shown on the news. Reporters called constantly until I changed our number. Lily struggled. She didn't understand why her mother lived in an apartment now, why she could only visit on supervised weekends, why kids at school whispered about her. I got her into therapy with Dr. Sarah Kim, a child psychologist who specialized in family trauma. It helped, but not enough. The FBI's investigation expanded. They found 23 forgeries total: Monet's, Renoir, Degas, Pissarro, even a Cassatt. Total fraudulent sales, 3.2 million. The museums were devastated. The collectors were furious. Several filed civil suits against Emily and Julian. Julian took a plea deal in month 6, 15 years in federal prison in exchange for testimony against Emily and a full accounting of the forgeries. He gave up everything: the techniques, the buyers, the money laundering schemes they'd used to hide the proceeds. Emily fought. Her attorney argued she'd been manipulated by Julian, that she was a victim of his scheme. The prosecution countered with the documentary evidence: emails showing Emily actively soliciting buyers, negotiating prices, creating false provenance documents. My testimony sealed it. I sat in that courtroom and told the truth about finding the files, about the storage unit, about watching her kiss Julian in the parking lot. Emily stared at me the entire time, her expression unreadable. The jury deliberated for 6 hours, guilty on all counts: conspiracy to commit wire fraud, mail fraud, money laundering, and making false statements. The sentencing hearing was in January, 11 months after that Saturday morning when the FBI had raided our house. I sat in the gallery with my parents, watching as Emily stood before the judge. She'd lost weight. Her hair was different, shorter. She looked older, smaller, diminished. The judge was a woman in her 60s named Patricia Holland. She'd reviewed all the evidence, read the victim impact statements from the defrauded collectors and museums. "Ms. Chambers," Judge Holland said, "you had every advantage in life: education, career, family. You chose to throw it all away for money and excitement. In doing so, you damaged institutions that serve the public good. You betrayed the trust of people who believed in your expertise. And you destroyed your own family." Emily's attorney tried to argue for leniency: first offense, cooperation with investigators, a young daughter who needed her mother. Judge Holland wasn't swayed. 12 years in federal prison, restitution of $3.2 million to the victims, supervised release for 3 years following incarceration. Emily crumpled. Her attorney caught her. Behind me, I heard Emily's mother sobbing. I felt nothing. Just a vast, empty relief that it was finally over. The divorce was finalized 2 weeks later. I got full custody of Lily, the house, and what remained of our legitimate assets. Emily got weekend visitation rights after her release, which wouldn't happen until Lily was 21. I sold the house. Too many memories, too many reporters who still occasionally drove by. Lily and I moved to a smaller place in a different neighborhood, one where nobody knew our story. Life moved forward because it had to. Lily adjusted, slowly. The therapy helped. Having routines helped. I cut back my hours at work, made sure I was there for every school event, every bedtime, every moment she needed me. We visited Emily once a month at the federal prison in West Virginia. Lily would sit across from her mother in the visiting room and talk about school, about friends, about everything except why we were there. Emily would smile and nod, and pretend everything was normal for those 2 hours. Then we'd drive home, and Lily would cry in the passenger seat while I gripped the steering wheel and wondered if I'd done the right thing. 3 years later, I was sitting in my office reviewing plans for a new library when my phone rang. Unknown number. Mr. Chambers, this is Dr. Kim, Lily's therapist. My heart jumped. Is everything okay? Everything's fine. I'm calling because Lily asked me to. She wants to talk to you about something, and she wanted me here when she does it. 20 minutes later, I was in Dr. Kim's office. Lily sat on the couch, 12 years old now, looking more like Emily every day but with my eyes. Dad, she said carefully, I've been thinking about Mom. Here it was. The conversation I'd been dreading for 3 years. Okay, I said. Dr. Kim and I have been talking about forgiveness, about how it doesn't mean what someone did was okay. It just means you stop letting it hurt you. She twisted her hands together. I think I'm ready to forgive Mom. Not for what she did, but for me. So I can stop being angry all the time. I looked at my daughter, this brave, thoughtful person who'd been forced to grow up too fast, and felt my throat tighten. That's very mature of you, sweetheart. But I wanted to know. She looked up at me. Have you forgiven her? Had I? I thought about Emily in that prison, paying for her crimes. About the collectors who'd gotten their money back through restitution. About the museums that had quietly removed the forgeries and moved on. About Julian Ashford, serving his 15 years in a different facility. Justice had been served. The scales had been balanced. But forgiveness? I'm working on it, I said honestly. Some days are easier than others. Lily nodded like she understood. Maybe she did. Dr. Kim says you did the right thing, she said quietly. Turning Mom in. That it was brave. I glanced at Dr. Kim, who gave me a small nod. I did what I had to do, I said. Not because I wanted to hurt your mother, but because what she was doing was wrong. People were being hurt. Museums, collectors, people who trusted her. I couldn't let that continue. Even though it hurt us? Even though it hurt us. Lily was quiet for a long moment. Then, I think I understand. I don't like it, but I understand. 5 years after Emily's sentencing, I met someone. Karen was a project architect at a firm we partnered with on a hospital expansion. She was divorced, had a teenage son, understood complicated family situations. We took things slowly. I told her everything on our third date, expecting her to run. She didn't. We all have histories, she said. Yours is more dramatic than most, but it doesn't define you. What defines you is how you showed up for your daughter, how you did the right thing even when it cost you everything. We got married 2 years later. Small ceremony, just family and close friends. Lily was my best person, standing beside me in a blue dress, 17 years old and headed to college in the fall. Emily had been released 6 months earlier, her sentence reduced for good behavior. She lived in Boston now, near her parents, working as a bookkeeper for a nonprofit. She and Lily talked on the phone weekly. They'd never be close the way they were before, but they were building something new, something honest. She sent a card congratulating me on the wedding. I didn't respond, but I didn't throw it away either. 10 years after that Saturday morning when FBI agents raided my house, I was helping Lily move into her first apartment after graduate school. She'd studied art history, of all things, and was starting a job at a museum in Philadelphia, authentication and provenance research. The irony wasn't lost on either of us. You sure about this career path? I asked, carrying a box of books up 3 flights of stairs. She smiled. Because of Mom? Dad, what she did doesn't change the fact that art matters. That authenticity matters. If anything, it made me want to do this work the right way. We set up her apartment, hung pictures, assembled furniture. That evening, we sat on her new couch eating pizza, and she said, "I've been thinking about writing to Mom, telling her about the job." What do you think she'd say? Probably that she's proud of me. Maybe that she's sorry. Lily picked at her pizza crust. Dr. Kim asked me once if I thought Mom loved us when she was doing all that stuff. What did you say? I said yes. That she loved us, but she loved the excitement more. The money, the affair, the thrill of getting away with it. She looked at me. Do you think that's true? I thought about Emily, the woman I'd married, the mother of my daughter, the criminal who destroyed our family. I thought about how people contain multitudes, how someone can love their child and still make choices that devastate them. I think people are complicated, I said finally. I think your mother loved you very much and still made terrible choices. Both things can be true. Lily nodded slowly. I'm going to write to her. Tell her about the job, about you and Karen, about my life. She paused. Is that okay? Sweetheart, you don't need my permission to have a relationship with your mother. I know. But I wanted you to know I'm not choosing her over you. I'm just choosing not to be angry anymore. I pulled her into a hug. That's the healthiest thing you could do. The final piece came 2 years later. I was 55, semi-retired, spending more time with Karen and her son, my stepson now, than at the office. Lily had gotten engaged to a fellow museum curator. Life was good, stable, honest. Then I got a letter from Emily. She'd been out of prison for 7 years. We hadn't spoken directly in over a decade, but her handwriting on the envelope was unmistakable. I almost threw it away. Then I opened it. Robert, I know I have no right to contact you. I know I destroyed everything we built, hurt you in ways I can never repair. But I'm writing because I need you to know something, even if you never respond. I'm sorry. Not sorry I got caught. Though I am sorry for that too. Sorry for what I did. For the lies, the betrayal, the crimes. For choosing excitement over integrity. For risking our daughter's well-being for money and an affair that meant nothing in the end. I've had 12 years to think about my choices. 12 years to understand what I threw away. You were a good husband, a good father. You deserved better than what I gave you. I don't expect forgiveness. I don't deserve it. But I wanted you to know that I understand now what I couldn't see then. That the life we had was enough. More than enough. And I destroyed it for nothing. Lily tells me you're happy. That you found someone who treats you well, that you're building a good life. I'm glad. You deserve happiness. Thank you for being there for our daughter when I couldn't be. Thank you for not turning her against me, even though you had every right to. Thank you for doing the hard thing, the right thing, even when it cost you everything. I hope someday you can think of me without anger. I don't expect more than that. Emily. I read the letter 3 times. Then I put it in a drawer and went to find Karen. You okay? She asked, looking up from her book. Yeah, I said, and meant it. The truth about betrayal is that it never fully heals. The scar tissue remains, a permanent reminder of what was broken. But scars are proof of survival. They're evidence that you endured something that should have destroyed you and came out the other side. Emily served her time. Julian served his. The defrauded collectors were made whole through restitution. The museums quietly removed the forgeries and moved on. The art world implemented better authentication protocols. Justice was served, as much as it ever is. But the real question was never about justice. It was about what you do when the person you trusted most betrays you so completely that your entire reality fractures. I chose to burn it down, to expose the lies, prosecute the crimes, and rebuild from ashes. Was it the right choice? I don't know. Some days I think about Lily crying in the car after visiting her mother in prison, about the years Emily missed of her daughter's life, about the family we could have been if I'd handled things differently. But then I remember the museums displaying forgeries, the collectors defrauded, the ongoing crimes that would have continued if I'd stayed silent. And I remember that sometimes the right thing and the easy thing are not the same. Sometimes you have to destroy everything to save what matters most. I saved my daughter. I saved my integrity. I saved the victims from further harm. The cost was my marriage, my family as I knew it, years of pain and reconstruction. But I'd do it again. Because in the end, the only person you have to live with is yourself. And I can look in the mirror and know I did the right thing, even when it was the hardest thing. That's not redemption. It's not forgiveness. It's not a happy ending. It's just the truth. And after years of living with lies, truth is enough.